Welcome to Life Astrologer with me, Anna Isabel. And today I have with me a wonderful horary astrologer. I have Anthony Lewis. Anthony, welcome to Life Astrologer.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
I've got your chart in front of me, and I notice, of course, the very first thing is that you are a Virgo. Mm-hmm. And I would say that a prerequisite for practicing horary astrology is an eye for detail. Would you agree?
I think so. I think this may not be accurate, but Lee Lehman, who's an excellent horary astrologer, I think she has sun, moon, and ascendant all in Virgo.
Yes, that surprised me. It's just that detail that's there. But you also have a fair amount of Leo there, you know, the moon, Venus and Mercury. And Pluto, not too far from the moon. It's not not too far from the moon. Right. How do you feel that plays into your life? That all that Leo and Pluto, that Pluto conjunction?
I'm not entirely sure because I don't feel very Leo. I guess it may play in the sense that I enjoy writing and presenting my work to the public in that sense. So that's kind of a Leo trait. But I really don't enjoy being the center of attention.
I think, you know, having the moon conjunct Pluto would take, and Venus, of course, would take the shine off that bright sunshine.
Yeah, well, I think the other way it may play is that my profession, not astrology is more of a hobby, is psychiatry. I'm a psychiatrist. And I think the interest in emotional trauma and getting deeply into people's emotional lives as a psychiatrist may be reflected by Moon Pluto. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. No question. And of course, Venus is involved in that, and she rules your 8th house too.
Yeah. And a lot of the work I've done in psychiatry has been with people in crisis.
Yes, I think absolutely that would be, but I think clearly what the Leo will add to this, although it's now through the filter of Pluto, is warmth. It's warmth. And I imagine that you have an ability to lift spirits too with that Leo.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think so. You know, it's in the 10th house, so obviously it's going to play out in your career. But I imagine too that you've done a fair amount of teaching.
Yes, yeah.
And that would be part of it.
Yeah, all of my life I've done teaching.
Yeah. And you've got Saturn sitting in that 10th house. In Cancer, it feels like, you know, at first glance, it feels like it's a bit out of place there. Okay, you've got the midheaven in Cancer as well. But first you see this block of Leo, and then there's Saturn all by himself,
right,
in that 10th house, which I think there's some mother stories to tell here.
Yeah, I think the most notable is my mother died when I was about 8 years old. So
yeah, that's again, as I said, you know, Pluto conjunct the moon, going to take that shine off. And I of course Pluto and death and so on. It's and then of course you also have that moon conjunct Venus too, and it's a fairly tight conjunction. So
very, very close.
Yeah, so it's a loss of warmth and light and love. It's like the sun's gone out at that early age. So no wonder you then become very interested in helping people in crisis and trauma. And so, yes, there it is.
I think also interested in astrology as a way to try to understand how all of this works.
Yes. Yeah. You start asking the questions, and you would start asking the questions. You've also got a fairly busy 9th house, don't you?
Yeah.
You've the North Node sitting there in Cancer, and Mars in Gemini and Uranus in Gemini, all in the ninth house, you are going to be asking questions.
Right. And writing about astrology.
And then, of course, it turns into, doing the writing, Mars in Gemini in the ninth house. Funny, I've had a few astrologers now with Mars in Gemini, either in the ninth or the 10th.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, and I have to confess to being one myself with Mars in the 10th.
Oh.
So it's, seems to be popular amongst us.
Right.
Your sun is in the 11th. So I think that, again, the connection, with astrology might speak there too. And Mercury there as well. A very strong 12th. It's all there in that part of the chart. So
right. It's all squeezed in one little section.
Exactly. Yeah. You've got Jupiter and Chiron and Neptune in Libra in the 12th and Libra rising. What would you say about those three sitting in your 12th?
Well, they're fairly close to the ascendant. So I think their 12th house would have a strong impact on the ascendant. And they probably relate to my interest in psychiatry as well, of understanding things that are hidden or emotional difficulties or things that people do to undermine themselves. The Chiron Neptune is a very tight conjunction. I've never understood it. I've seen it, and I always draw a blank. I don't know what to make of that. But I think also, though, their presence in the 12th, Jupiter, Neptune in particular, has to do with partly my interest in divination. So I'm also very interested in tarot and other forms of divination besides astrology.
Yes, I would say that's true, but I was just thinking about that Chiron Neptune conjunction. Of course, they're all in Libra, and the dispositor is
the Venus, yeah.
Yes. So we're back to Venus, and I think back to your mother again, because I think what that Chiron Neptune conjunction is about is the wound.
Yeah, and it's sextile the moon and Venus.
And I don't know, but I feel here like I'm going to state the obvious, and then I'm going to have to explain beyond the obvious.
Okay.
But to state the obvious would be to say, that the loss of your mother was a huge loss, as it would be for a child. But I think it's not just the physical loss of her, it's everything she embodied.
Exactly, yeah.
It's everything she embodied and everything she was. It's beyond the fact that you lost your mother. It's everything that she gave you and everything that she taught you and everything that she taught with you, which to me seems to be soft and gentle. And I think that's what made it such a huge loss. Does that resonate?
I think that event is the most important event and had the most major impact on my life. Yeah.
Yes. And coming back, you being an horary astrologer, and I've been reading your wonderful tome yet again. It's probably one of my most leafed tomes in the house for some years. But you often talk about the ancients referring to the 12th house as the house of sorrow, and so when you have that Chiron Neptune conjunction there, which even if they were not there, I'd be looking at it somewhat suspiciously as the depth of a wound that would be inflicted on the individual via those two. But here it's very personalized because it's sitting in your 12th house, and the dispositor is Venus. We haven't even talked about the fact that there are squares here to the North Node, which is in Cancer. So yet again, so there's something here about that loss which attunes you, I think, to what you later become in your life. It's an obvious statement to say that it's a life-changing event.
Yeah.
but it almost doesn't do it justice to say it's a life-changing.
Mhm. Well, I think it's
almost
very
like
related to,
soul-forming event,
yeah,
if I put it that way.
but I think it's related to psychiatry and psychotherapy in the sense that it's kind of a mothering profession. People come to you because they're hurting in some way emotionally, and they look to you to help understand the pain and find a way through it and then continue to grow. And basically it's mothers do.
Yes, that is the role of a properly functioning mother, shall we say.
Yeah.
And I think so. The next thing I was going to add to that is that the healing function of Chiron is also very powerful, particularly 12th house there. And I can't help feel that this was, there are signatures, there are signatures in charts where you could see the finger of fate. And I think here, most definitely, given that there's this square between these two, or these three, because Jupiter is involved, and the North Node as well. And the North Node is in Cancer. I mean, you can't speak more eloquently about that finger of fate in the chart. It's as though this happened because it opened this portal to who you were meant to be. That's
a good way to look at it.
That's how I would see it. Did you, in your work as a psychiatrist, did you spend a lot of time in hospitals?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. There's that 12th house again. It's well, now.
Right. I always had a connection with a hospital. And for many years, I ran a crisis program that was part of the outpatient services of a hospital.
And did you also work with addiction?
Not too much. I mean, yes, I did, but it wasn't my preferred area. I always found it very difficult to work with addictions.
I wondered whether the strength of the Neptune and the Pluto might have pulled you in that direction, but actually you rather preferred to avoid it, it sounds like.
I always found it one of the most difficult areas to work in, partly because the addictions can be so strong and the chemical, just people devote themselves to their substance and really aren't interested until they hit bottom and changing emotionally or psychologically. The main motivation is, I want the drug. And it's very hard for me to get beyond that. Some people do very well with addictions. I don't.
No, I can understand that, because what you want is you want to see people getting better.
Yeah.
It's,
to be committed to the process of working with me to get better.
Exactly. And is healing is never exactly linear, but this is seriously not linear, working with addiction.
No.
It isn't. And I think too, you've got Mars in Gemini and you're a Leo, and you've got the moon in Leo and you're a Virgo. And these are signs that like to see results.
I think the other issue with addictions, very often a lot of the treatment is confronting people about their denial or their pursuit of drugs. And with Libra rising, it's hard to be confrontational in a way that's effective.
Yes, absolutely. I can see that. I can see. This is, how can I put this? It's too gentle a chart, in a sense, to be dealing with that hardcore confrontation that you have to when you're dealing with hardcore addicts.
Yeah.
Well, Anthony, thank you very much for letting us have a glimpse into your charts today.
Well, it was interesting. Thank you.
You've been watching Life Astrologer with me, Anna Isabel. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, goodbye.